Imagine waking up in the middle of surgery, feeling every slice, every clamp, every movement, but being completely paralyzed, unable to scream for help. Or consider the tragic moment a man leapt into history, only for the waters below to betray him. And then, there's the chilling tale of a journalist whose mysterious death still leaves experts scratching their heads. These aren't stories from a horror movie. They're real-life medical disasters that will make your jaw drop. Buckle up, because these shocking tales will stay with you long after you've heard them. Our journey begins in late 19th century America, a time when firefighting innovation clashed with human fear in a tragic and fascinating way. During this period, fire departments introduced large safety nets, massive circular canvases designed to save people trapped in burning buildings. Firefighters would position the net beneath a window and call out to those inside, urging them to jump to safety. The idea was simple: leap onto the net to break the fall and escape the flames. Yet, a chilling phenomenon emerged. Many victims, gripped by terror, found the prospect of jumping more frightening than facing the fire. Despite firefighters' desperate pleas, countless individuals hesitated and perished in the infernos. Determined to change this tragic trend, Robert Odlum, a diving instructor from Washington, D.C., took it upon himself to demonstrate the safety of these nets. A skilled jumper, Robert believed a live example could erase people's fears. Partnering with local fire departments, he began hosting public demonstrations, leaping from multi-story buildings onto safety nets. These events quickly became a spectacle, drawing massive crowds, not for the educational value, but for the thrill of watching someone defy gravity. Robert, who had only intended to save lives, found himself reveling in his newfound fame. Over time, his focus shifted from promoting fire safety to performing daring stunts. He began leaping off towering bridges into rivers, transforming himself into a nationwide sensation. Crowds flocked to see him, cheering as he leapt from dizzying heights. His daring feats turned him into a household name, but his success spawned imitators. By 1885, his once unique act was no longer a rarity, and Robert sought a way to reclaim his throne as the ultimate jumper. Enter the Brooklyn Bridge. Newly constructed, it was an engineering marvel spanning 1,600 feet and towering 130 feet above the East River. A jump from its height would set a record, cementing Robert's legacy. However, bridge jumping had become illegal, and police routinely disrupted such events. Undeterred, Robert devised a plan. Through cryptic flyers and word of mouth, he orchestrated a clandestine campaign to lure spectators while evading authorities. On May 19, 1885, Robert's plan unfolded. Hundreds of onlookers gathered on the Brooklyn Bridge and along its banks, eager to witness history. Around noon, a black carriage arrived, and a man leapt out wearing a long coat. He removed it to reveal a swimsuit, waving to the crowd as they roared in excitement. But as he prepared to jump, police swarmed him. It seemed Robert's stunt had been thwarted, until, on the far side of the bridge, another black carriage appeared. The real Robert Odlum stepped out, coat billowing. With his signature flair, he waved to the crowd, shed his coat, and ran to the edge of the bridge. While police scrambled to react, Robert climbed the railing, flashed a final smile, and leapt into the void. The crowd held its breath as he soared gracefully through the air. Initially, his form was perfect, his right arm extended upward, his left tucked at his side. But a sudden gust of wind sent him spinning off balance. Bridge jumpers rely on a precise vertical entry to break the water's surface tension safely. Deviating from this position can turn water into a fatal barrier, mimicking the hardness of concrete. Despite frantic midair adjustments, Robert couldn't regain control. He hit the water on his side with catastrophic force. Spectators gasped, unsure of what had happened. Moments later, Robert surfaced, face down and unresponsive. Friends in a nearby boat rushed to his aid, pulling him aboard. Blood trickled from his mouth, and he weakly asked, "Did I make a good jump?" before succumbing to his injuries. An autopsy revealed the devastating impact had ruptured his liver, spleen, and kidneys, breaking all the ribs on his right side. In the world of bridge jumping, the year following Robert Odlum's daring Brooklyn Bridge leap brought a new record. Larry Donovan, another bridge jumper, managed the feat and survived, solidifying his place in history with the highest bridge jump at the time. Fast forward to 1978 in London, where a chillingly mysterious story unfolded involving 49-year-old Georgi Markov. Originally from Bulgaria, Georgi had relocated to the UK 6 years prior and worked as a reporter for the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC. In his early years in London, he preferred commuting by cab or bus, but eventually he began enjoying the simple pleasure of walking to work. His route included a stop at the iconic Waterloo Bridge, offering breathtaking views of the Westminster Palace on one side and the famed London Eye on the other. On the morning of September 7th, Georgi embarked on his usual commute. The day started pleasantly enough, but rain soon began to fall as he approached the bridge. Without an umbrella, he hurried past his favorite vantage point, aiming to reach the shelter of his office before the downpour worsened. However, the rain became relentless, prompting Georgi to search for a bus stop. He found one nearby and joined the small crowd of commuters huddled beneath an awning. As he waited for the bus, a sudden, sharp pain shot through the back of his right thigh. Instinctively, Georgi grabbed at his leg but found nothing unusual. He tried to inspect the source of his discomfort but couldn't see clearly amidst the bustling crowd. The possibilities raced through his mind. Had someone accidentally poked him with a pen? Was it a bee sting or a spider bite? Whatever the cause, it seemed trivial, and when the bus arrived, Georgi dismissed the incident and boarded. By the time he reached his desk at the BBC and sat down, the pain flared up again. It felt as though a splinter was lodged in his leg, and pressing against the chair aggravated it. Still, Georgi brushed it off, convinced it was nothing serious. Determined to focus on his busy day, he continued working, though the pain remained a persistent distraction. As hours passed, the discomfort escalated to an unbearable level. By afternoon, Georgi was pale, sweating, and visibly in distress. Unable to ignore it any longer, he left his desk and headed to the bathroom. There, he examined the back of his leg in the mirror and saw mild redness and swelling. Nothing alarming, or so he thought. He returned to his desk, gritting his teeth through the pain. When Georgi finally arrived home that evening, his wife was shocked by his appearance. He looked unwell, drenched in sweat, and unnervingly pale. After hearing about his leg pain, she insisted they go to the hospital immediately. Reluctantly, Georgi agreed. At the emergency room, doctors listened to his account and examined the back of his thigh. To Georgi's shock, the redness and swelling had intensified dramatically. The doctors, puzzled by the severity of his condition, speculated about the cause. One even asked whether anyone near him at the bus stop had been handling a reptile or a snake, as the mark resembled a venomous bite. Georgi dismissed the idea, recalling nothing unusual about the crowd at the bus stop. Despite their efforts, the doctors couldn't pinpoint the issue. Georgi was admitted to the hospital for observation and treatment, but his condition deteriorated rapidly. His leg became grotesquely swollen and reddened, resembling a balloon about to burst. His mental state also declined as paranoia set in. Convinced someone had attempted to harm him, Georgi resisted medical care, complicating efforts to help him. On the third day of his hospital stay, Georgi's body succumbed. His organs shut down, and he passed away, leaving doctors baffled. An autopsy was ordered to uncover the mystery behind his sudden and strange death. During the autopsy, the coroner made a startling discovery, unraveling the chilling truth behind Georgi Markov's tragic demise. Hidden beneath the skin on the back of Georgi Markov's right leg lay the clue to his untimely death, a tiny metallic object. During the autopsy, the coroner nearly missed it. It was that small. Upon closer inspection under a microscope, this minute disc revealed a chilling design. It was unmistakably man-made, featuring 2 micro-reservoirs drilled into its surface. Intrigued, the coroner sent the artifact for further analysis, and the results were shocking. Residue within the reservoirs tested positive for ricin, one of the most lethal poisons known to humanity. Ricin, deadlier than cyanide and with no antidote, is a favored tool for life-taking due to its subtlety. Its symptoms often mimic those of common illnesses, making it nearly impossible to diagnose without direct evidence. Experts concluded that Georgie had been the victim of a meticulously planned life-taking. But who was responsible, and why? The prevailing theory points to Georgie's work as a BBC journalist. He was an outspoken critic of the Soviet Union, making him a potential target of their infamous intelligence agency, the KGB. This theory gained traction when Oleg Kalugin, a former KGB officer exiled to the US, later claimed to have overseen such life-taking programs. According to Kalugin, the KGB used an umbrella modified to deliver the deadly disc. The tip of the umbrella concealed the device, which had been coated in a thin layer of wax to temporarily encase the ricin. The assassin, blending into the morning crowd, jabbed Georgie's leg with the umbrella and vanished. As per the account, the wax melted upon exposure to Georgie's body heat, releasing the ricin and initiating a slow, fatal chain of events. While Kalugin's testimony paints a vivid picture of this operation, it lacks concrete evidence. To this day, no one has been officially charged with Georgy Markov's death, leaving his case shrouded in mystery. Now let's pivot to another tale of shocking human experience, one that delves into the darker recesses of medical mishaps. In 2006, Sherman Sizemore, a retired coal miner turned Baptist minister, embodied resilience. Having survived countless life-threatening incidents during his mining career in West Virginia, Sherman was admired for his strength, warmth, and unwavering faith. Yet, in January of that year, something unexplainable transformed this pillar of the community into a man consumed by fear and paranoia. On the afternoon of January 19th, Sherman and his wife Ruby were relaxing at home when his behavior took a sudden, terrifying turn. Out of nowhere, Sherman began screaming uncontrollably, his eyes locked on an invisible terror. Ruby, startled and confused, tried to comfort him, but he seemed trapped in a trance. When he finally snapped out of it, his words chilled her. "You can't leave me or they'll come for me." Ruby had never seen her husband like this. Over the course of the day, his episodes intensified, punctuated by delusions and uncontrollable fear. Despite her growing concern, Ruby hesitated to call for help, hoping he would return to normal by morning. However, the next day only brought more alarming behavior. Sherman refused to let anyone but Ruby near him, convinced that even his family was conspiring against him. The mystery of Sherman's sudden breakdown began months earlier when he experienced severe abdominal pain. Doctors suspected his gallbladder was the culprit and recommended exploratory surgery. On the morning of January 19th, Sherman checked into the hospital, joking with nurses and preparing for what was supposed to be a routine procedure. Sherman was slated to undergo general anesthesia, a process involving a two-medication cocktail, one to paralyze the body and another to eliminate pain and induce unconsciousness. As he lay on the operating table, the anesthesiologist administered only the paralyzing medication, either through negligence or oversight. Sherman, believing he was drifting into sleep, counted down in his head. 10, 9, 8. By the time he reached 0, he realized something was horribly wrong. Though his body was immobilized, Sherman's mind remained fully alert. He could feel every sensation as the surgeons began their work, but he was powerless to signal his agony. Unable to move or speak, he endured the unimaginable, a phenomenon known as anesthesia awareness. The trauma of experiencing surgery while paralyzed left Sherman deeply scarred. In the midst of his gallbladder surgery, Sherman Sizemore endured a nightmare most people can't even fathom. As he lay on the operating table, completely immobilized by a paralyzing drug, Sherman was fully conscious but unable to communicate or move. The team had made a critical error. While administering the paralytic medication, they had failed to provide the anesthetic that would numb his pain and render him unaware of the activities around him. Initially, Sherman assumed the anesthetic was simply slow to take effect. However, as seconds passed and the medical team began the procedure, a horrifying reality set in. He could feel everything. His body was paralyzed, but his mind was sharp. His eyes, the only part of his body he could control, darted frantically under the tape, sealing his lids shut, attempting to signal his distress. The rapid movement of his eyes loosened the tape just enough to create a tiny slit, allowing him to glimpse the scene unfolding before him. Through the narrow opening, he watched in horror as the surgeon donned gloves, requested a scalpel, and made the first incision in his abdomen. The pain was excruciating. Every pierce, every pull, and every instrument used on his body sent shockwaves of agony through him. Yet he was powerless to cry out or move. Sherman's ordeal lasted 16 harrowing minutes. At one point, the surgeon called for clamps, using them to hold open the incision while inspecting the area. Every tug felt like lightning striking his nerves. Despite his desperate attempts to communicate his awareness by moving his eyes, no one noticed, until a nurse happened to glance at his face. Their eyes locked, and she realized with horror that he was awake. "Stop! He's awake!" the nurse shouted, causing the surgical team to freeze. The surgeon, visibly shaken, demanded the anesthesiologist address the situation. The anesthesiologist rushed over, administering a painkiller and realizing in that moment the critical mistake. He had forgotten to give Sherman the anesthetic. As the painkiller took effect, Sherman's ordeal subsided, and he drifted into unconsciousness. But the damage had been done. When Sherman awoke in the recovery room, the amnesia-inducing drug midazolam had also been administered. This medication erased his conscious memory of the surgical trauma, but the psychological scars remained. His subconscious retained every second of the 16 minutes of excruciating pain, and it manifested as intense anxiety and dread without a clear source. Returning home that evening, Sherman was no longer the man who had confidently walked into the hospital. He experienced overwhelming panic attacks and terrifying flashbacks. The disconnection between his emotions and memories left him bewildered, believing he was being haunted by inexplicable nightmares. His family, deeply concerned, sought medical and psychological help, but the severity of his trauma made treatment challenging. On February 2nd, just 2 weeks after the surgery, the relentless torment proved too much for Sherman to bear. Unable to reconcile the terrifying feelings within him, he tragically unalived himself. His death devastated his family, who were determined to uncover what had gone so terribly wrong. Through relentless investigation, Sherman's family obtained his medical records and consulted independent experts. It was then they learned the horrifying truth. Sherman had been fully aware and in agony for 16 minutes of his surgery due to a medical error, a case of anesthesia awareness, a rare but deeply traumatic phenomenon experienced by approximately 20,000 patients annually. Sherman's case, however, was exceptionally rare due to the duration and intensity of his experience. In 2008, his family sued the hospital, eventually receiving an undisclosed settlement. While the financial compensation acknowledged the hospital's negligence, it could never erase the pain of losing a beloved husband, father, and grandfather to such a preventable tragedy. Sherman's story stands as a harrowing reminder of the importance of vigilance in medical practice, as even the smallest oversight can have devastating consequences. The stories of Robert Odlum, Georgy Markov, and Sherman Sizemore aren't just tales of tragedy. They're a stark reminder of how thin the line between life and disaster can be. From daring leaps of fame to deadly poisons and unimaginable medical nightmares, these accounts leave us questioning how fragile human resilience truly is. If these stories gave you chills, hit the like button, share with someone who loves a good mystery, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, reality is often more terrifying than fiction.